let's call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do a roll call, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Wonderjeb.
Here.
Ibor.
Here.
Steffes.
Here.
Gardine.
Present.
Palmer. Here. DeHaan.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
4-3.
Please note, as a courtesy to members of the audience and to the Board of Education, to silence your cell phones. The public will be able to speak during the public comment section if signed up. Do I have any other public comment forms that need to come in right now? All right. We are moving on to our agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support?
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a presentation from Century Park Elementary School.
Yes, very excited. We'll turn things over to Mrs. Musin from Century Park Learning Center.
Hi, my name is Tara Musin, and I happen to be the art teacher at Century Park Learning Center and at Central Elementary. And for the last year, I've had the privilege of getting to be a Crayola Creativity Ambassador as well. So the National Art Education Association and Crayola chose their top 75 most creative art teachers in the country to help them develop and lead National Creativity Week, and I got to be one of those. So I was able to bring National Creativity Week back to our students in Grandville, which looked different depending on every classroom that you were in. One of the wonderful things about National Creativity Week is that it's all about trying to get creativity into all areas of school, not just the arts, but our core curriculum instruction as well. So some of our teachers took those core curriculum and lessons and they used them right during National Creativity Week 2 weeks ago. And I know some of those have pocketed those lessons for when they get to specific topics. And so today I just want to share with you just a little bit from National Creativity Week, and I have a couple of students who are going to share their thoughts with you as well. So we've already kind of gone through this, but National Creativity Week is a week sponsored by Crayola to try to bring awareness about creativity. And this year we had over 24,000 schools involved, which is great. There were 5 in-school lessons that kids could do, and then also lessons over the weekend, which are just really fun for students. And since I'm boring, there's lots of student pictures to look at instead because they're far more entertaining than me. So one of the things that we ask students to think about during National Creativity Week is what is creativity? And so you'll see some of the answers written out by students along with some of their artwork. But I'm also going to ask one of our students to step up and share her piece with you. So go ahead, first tell them your name.
My name is Kaylin.
Okay, and then can you show them your work?
So I made this like alien cheerleading thing whenever we were doing this, and I just made it look like just really weird, and just made it how I just thought would make it look funny and just cool at the same time because I want it to look like that.
So can you tell us what it means to be creative?
Creativity means a lot to me because it helps me view the world in a more expressive way. It's important to me because my creativity, it helps me relax, calm down whenever I'm overwhelmed or stressed or bored. Being creative means being able to show your emotions and passion in the form of art where others have a chance to relate. It is so important because it allows people to feel themselves while showing others who they are.
Great job. Awesome. Good work. So in the lesson that she showed you, we were trying to get students to problem solve. And so as crazy as it sounds, I told them they had to illustrate a joke or an idiom or a metaphor. And then, while they were illustrating their joke, idiom, or metaphor, I kept randomly giving them cards that had more things on it that had to be added. So she started with her alien cheerleaders, and partway through I said, okay, now you need to add in a turkey, and you need to add in a mustache, and you need to add in a this, and you needed to add in a that, and they needed to figure out how to put all of those pieces together into a whole. So the goal of Creativity Week is just to really get these kids to think about what it means to break the rules and to think outside of the box and to make something something different than anybody else. So here you're seeing 6th grade examples of different creative landscapes. So some of those are realistic places, some of those are places they want to go in their dreams. And then again, this great question of why is creativity important is something that we ask kids to think about. And so I'm actually going to have Grace step up, if you're willing, and show her work to you. Go ahead and just tell them your name.
My name's Grace.
Okay, and can you show them your artwork?
Oh,
There you go.
It's very pretty.
Here, and I'll hold it up for you. And Grace, can you tell us what you like about art?
I like art because I like that you can do anything with it, and there are so many different forms of art to create.
Very cool. And can you tell us why you think it's important to be creative?
Because being creative challenges your mind and makes you use your imagination.
Very cool. So I'm going to let you hold your piece and show the crowd that way too, because they didn't get to see. In Grace's work of art, we were doing something totally different. We actually were listening to different pieces of music, and we were inspired by those music in each drawing. So we'd listen to a piece of music, and then as crazy as it sounds, you'd turn your paper and pretend it was blank. And listen to a piece of music and turn your paper. And as they went through this process over and over again, they ended up with an overlapping crazy drawing that doesn't look like anything anymore. And so then she had to take her piece and think about what were the most important parts of this piece and recolor it to turn it into something exciting.
Oh, my friend, are you
Some more great answers from our students about what it means to be creative and just different examples of their work as we went through the week. It was a very fun week. You'll see some space-themed work up there. We tied some of our science lessons with NASA this year, which was very fun. The National Society of Librarians also joined in on National Creativity Week and worked with us as well, dictating some of how we use similes and metaphors and idioms and teach those to students. So it's just a very interesting week to be able to tie creativity across all of our curriculum. One of the questions from kids all week and from parents was, how is creativity different than art? And I think the answer for that is that art comes down to us learning techniques and supplies. And creativity is a tool that we use in art, but it's a creativity that we can use across all of our curriculum to make things more exciting and to teach children how to problem solve and how to really become those lifelong learners that we're looking to create in Grandville. So then our last question up here is, why is art so important? And I'm gonna have Mira step up here and show off her beautiful artwork. Very nice. Okay, and Mira, can you tell us why do you like art? Why do you like art?
Art is what I look forward to in school. It kind of just makes sense. And when you don't want to talk to people, it can be like a form of therapy. And it helps me understand math better. And art is something we need.
Awesome. Can you tell us why we need art in school?
Art is important to have in school because it builds kids' confidence. When a kid creates something that they really like, it makes them feel better about themselves and like art more.
Good job. Thank you. So Grandville's already on top of things. Obviously, being chosen to be one of Crayola's top 75 creative art teachers, we've got a lot happening in our district that we already do to showcase the arts that we were able to bring and share with other people at Crayola, especially things like our Art and Chocolate Walk and how we run our art nights in different schools, but we are doing a lot if you don't know it. Right now, hosted in downtown Grand Rapids is the Michigan Art Education Association competition, and we have 5 Grandville students in this competition right now from our elementary schools. These 5 students are competing. If they make it on to the next level, they'll actually go on display in Ann Arbor, and then have the potential of going into the Governor's Showcase. And so it's huge. Region 9 is a very large school district region. For us to be able to compete at that level is amazing. In addition to that, we've got Art and Chocolate Walk coming up on April 28th. So if you haven't seen enough art tonight, join us downtown then. And it's a chance to see our art from our pre-kindergartners all the way through our 12th graders, and also all of our music programs as well, which is just amazing. And it's just wonderful to see how our entire community comes out to support our school district in that event. And then we've got our school art walks that happen in several of our elementary schools. They're really fun. Right now we have some really fun competitions happening in the elementary schools like Doodle for Google. If you yourselves on the board have students in school, Doodle for Google is a national competition that comes out during National Creativity Week where kids can try to win a $30,000 scholarship from Google. So we have kids across the district competing in that right now. The Scholastic art and writing competitions were last month, and we had 5 Grandville High School scholars who actually run awards at the Scholastic competitions. And then we're expanding our art clubs in a way to get kids involved in art after school and for my wonderful 5th graders here during lunch. So it's been a lot of fun to see all of the exciting things happening in Grandville with the arts. Thanks for letting us take a minute and share them with you.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
everybody.
much.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank
Great
you.
presentation
Great
and wonderful
work.
art.
Way to be creative.
Give them a moment to exit. All right. Yeah, it's so great. Love having them here. All right, our next item on the agenda is our consent action agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Carries. Our next item is, I'm really excited about this, the GHS Aeronautics course proposal. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following proposal for aeronautics as a new course to be offered at Grandville High School. This course would be a full-year elective course that could serve as a student's technology requirement and/or a 4th-year math elective. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right.
And we are very excited to bring this to you tonight. Mr. Langto and Dr. Merkel are here to review what it is.
All right, hard to follow the kids' art there, but this will be good. So I have with us tonight Chris Grunhout, who is our instructional technology coach at Grandville High School, and Chris has done a great job in that role, helping students and staff with the changes we went through the last couple of years, but helping us engage more in technology. But he's also been doing some great work to do some independent studies around the field of aeronautics, and most recently with drones and looking at some independent studies with drones. And last year there was a great School News Network article on a student who was going to go into the golf course development business and how you can use drones with that along with real estate and things. And Chris's independent study course has grown. We're also able to partner with our AV program, which is constantly using more and more drones. So the natural question was, what else can this grow into? And I'll let Chris talk about that, but I just wanted to introduce the reason behind it and kind of where we got to, and Chris will go over the course that we are proposing tonight. So.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me here tonight, guys. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Yeah, so this is kind of this natural evolution of this class. We just kind of did this for fun, and the kids really wanted to get into it. The AV course, particularly, they wanted to do stuff like this, be able to shoot the football field, do games, and that kind of stuff. And technically speaking, you're supposed to have a license to do that, right? So we said, well, how can we do that and give the kids a chance in school to get this knowledge and get this certification? So that started last year. We had 5 kids enrolled in that course, and then this year we expanded to 10 students and another curriculum piece, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then now the next evolution of that would be to add flight training as well, so to be a pilot. And so why would that happen? So there's a kind of a confluence of different events that triggered this. One was community interest. We're getting parents asking all the time, or, do we have anything like that? Like, my kid wants to go to West Michigan Aviation, but I want to keep him in Grandville because he's on the athletic teams and all his friends are in Grandville, and we want to keep him here. And it's like, yeah, sorry. So that's part of it. Industry demand is huge. A lot of these curriculum foundations are all funded by the airlines. They want people to get into aviation. Aerospace, there's just a huge amount of demand. I could go on for a long time on that. Student interest and just retention, like I mentioned, students want to stay with Grandville. They want to be in the high school, and they don't want to necessarily go to West Michigan Aviation. They don't necessarily want to go to KCTC and being out of school for half the day to make that happen, and do something that's tangentially related, with avionics. And it's not exactly aviation, but it's close, so they do that sometimes. And then state education requirements, they have opened up SIP codes, which is a term related to career and technology education, where they can get credit in high school for taking this course. Curriculum support, again, giving students different ways to meet different high school graduation requirements. And then, of course, in industry support, there's a lot of people around us that want to help because they need kids that know something about aviation, aerospace, and so forth. Some of the career paths that are out there that are just new and emerging, here's just a few. But again, we're trying to set kids up for a successful future, and these things are just new, and we need to try to evolve and adapt to a changing workforce. Getting these kids this experience early in high school is going to give them a foot forward. We have one of the best aviation schools in the country right here in Western Michigan, and they're a top-rated school for aviation. And we have a high demand for drone jobs in Michigan, not just flying the drones, but all the technology behind it. U of M is doing some research with those, the aerospace industry, and then the whole computerized part of this, like planning flight plans and so forth. The state has just partnered with some aerospace industries on that. So without getting into each one of these, but these are just some of the programs that have pledged their support to this program. There's, again, a lot of interest in supporting aviation industry, from multi-billion-dollar aerospace companies to, our local sheriff's office, who has a drone rescue response division. So there's a lot of support. The AOPA is one of our main partners. They're the ones that provide the curriculum. So they have already developed the curriculum to integrate with state standards. So reading and writing, math, science is all integrated. So it's another great thing about this. They get to see how the real world works. Like when all of these things kind of gel together into a career, right? They can see how they can apply that knowledge. The FAA, we applied for a grant. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that one, but that's a big one. If we get that one, that'll be another $250,000 to add to this program, which could provide some additional funding for flight training and a statewide outreach program. So this is the general pathway. As Ms. Klein mentioned, that the first semester would be flying in the environment, which is general communication, reading maps, charts, weather, doing some of the basic math behind all kinds of aviation. And then in the second semester, they could choose their path. They could decide, hey, I want to go into flying drones and getting Part 107 certified, or I want to go the pilot route and get all my ground work done and be able to take the test. So both of those are set up so the student at the end of the course will be able to take and pass their FAA certification, either for Part 107 to fly drones or their ground school, their FAA written exam for their pilot's license. So this kind of fits in, as Adam was saying, with the high school. They need to be able to have some other ways to satisfy their graduation requirements that fit in with something that they love, that they're really interested in. So with that, we're also applying at this time for the Career and Technology Education Accreditation, which would allow us to receive funding from the state and give some kids some other credit options. So right now, we mentioned we're looking at technology, fourth year math, English language arts. With the CTE accreditation, it would allow us to give them credit for foreign language or Algebra 2, depending on how we roll that out exactly. Okay. So that's all I have. Again, kids are really interested in, we have a lot of interest and support from the community, and in no small part to the latest Top Gun movie, but also a lot of interest just because, there's these new jobs that are out there, and we need to try to help at least expose kids to those jobs and give them an opportunity to move forward and be excited and about their future and do something positive in high school towards that end.
I was just talking with a guy at work last week, hadn't seen him in a while, and his son just graduated from Calvin College, and he got a job at Moore & Brugink Engineering, and his primary role is going to be flying their drone because he took drone classes like outside of college and some in college, but they can do all of their surveying now with a drone from above instead of having a surveying crew. So he said they bought like a $50,000 drone, and then they're using that now to do the surveying instead of having the guys in the ground.
Yeah, one of our partners here too is Michigan State University, and they do a lot of their surveying now, agricultural surveying using drones and fertilizer spreading, pesticides, all using drones. Kent County, they do search and rescue. They have a thermal sensing drone so they can find people in the water or in the woods, and so there's just so many different applications these days.
Can you go to the semester breakdown and the choices that they can make real quick?
You betcha.
I've got a couple questions on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, flying environment, first semester. Do you think many students would want to do both options for the second semester, and you think you'll extend that in any way?
We've talked about that too, because some of the kids that are taking it this year are only in the second semester of the UAS operations. So we were saying, well, if they did want to take it next year, they could take flying in the environment and then flight planning too. The AOPA also has another year of courses beyond this if we saw the interest and we could expand it. But that would be, beyond your regular flight training, like IFR, like getting into instrument training. And then for the UAS, their second course on that would be a specialization. So either, law enforcement or search and rescue, those kind of things, getting real specific into it.
Do you think that when someone wants to go into this field, that there's a need to continue on to college or just stay in this kind of a training environment?
That's up for debate, but what has happened, it used to be the airlines required a 4-year degree, and now they don't. The demand is so high that they're just needing people to get trained and get out there. You still need the 1,500 hours to be an airline pilot, so that's no small task, but they don't have to get a 4-year degree necessarily. That's more for like the business side of things, running an airport. But again, there's a lot of other jobs that these apply to tangentially again. So like air traffic control, right? Security, aerospace engineering. So there's a lot of things that would be really helpful to understand this side of things on the management end.
Do you think you'll have enough kids? Do you think you fill then?
It seems to be that way.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
we
you're not
started out with
concerned
like
about-
5 one year, just mentioning it to a couple of teachers and say, hey, and then it filled up really fast. And then this year we said, all right, let's open it up to 10 kids. And like magically in a week, we found 10 kids. So I would think that if we start advertising now instead of like right before it happens, that we would easily fill up. We were trying to cap it around 20 kids.
20?
Yeah. Just to kind of keep it manageable, because we don't know like if this FAA grant's going to happen. Money's a factor, time's a factor, and the kids have to be kind of serious about it too. So if we get 10 kids UAS and 10 kids pilot, and if that grant happens, we'd have enough to fund their flight training as well. So 20 would be a good number.
So I was one of those parents that was talking to you because my son was taking flight classes at the time, and I think this was pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my other question, was funding those hours is not cheap. And so so you're saying if these come through, then with that 10 cap, or whatever you decide to do that as, that could even be part of that course.
Yes. Yep.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah, it is. So the FAA portion would be funding for that, but we're also looking at the CTE is helping to fund some of that flight training. That's how. So Detroit Public Schools, there's only like 4 schools in the whole state that have some kind of flight training thing. And Detroit Public has it, and they use their CTE funding to help subsidize their student. Yeah, because
That
it's
is
like
so cool.
$10,000 to pay for all those flight lessons. But they would be able to get their ground in with us, and so that would save them a chunk of that too.
Oh, so that's a big chunk.
Is the written exam, the FAA's private pilot written exam, is that something the district there's a charge for that, and is the district picking the bill up for that?
There's a charge, and we haven't really hammered that out, what our budget's going to look like. Again, we have these different funding sources, and we have to figure out which ones are going to pan out. The CTE will most definitely happen. The FAA, we're still waiting to hear. But yeah, right now we're kind of thinking it's going to be almost like an AP kind of course thing. Where it's, it's $175 to take either test, and so we could possibly subsidize that if like free and reduced lunch like we do with AP, but we haven't gotten into the weeds on funding those.
Got it.
How will
Cool
we,
program.
if you have an enormous response, how will students be selected?
Yeah, again, we haven't gotten into that either, but it's going to have to be, we don't want it to be like an academic thing. I mean, there's got to be some basic academics there, but it's more of an interest level, and then probably, seniors down so that everybody gets a chance to take it. So look at what seniors we have applying and where the interest levels are.
Yeah.
And for the right reasons, right? Not just so they can get out of class, but
Not
that
as a credit.
Yeah. Well, this has been a hot topic of conversation in our household. I have a son who went out to avionics this year because it's the best option. And now he sees this and he's just like, well, now he wants to do maintenance, avionics, and this. So he's like, he's got it mapped out. I'm leaving the house at 6 a.m. to get to the airport. Then I'm coming back at 11. Then it's cute, but this is an amazing opportunity and just another great way to get our students opportunities for career pathways. I've seen it in my household, like change night and day the experience of my child, going from frustration because he didn't fit the mold of a classroom to excited every single day to come to school because he's doing something that he's got a passion about, and I see this coming into our district with these opportunities. So thank you so much for seeing it, for investing the time, because it's no small deal to write grants and to reach out and find these funding sources, and this is no tiny ticket. It costs a lot of money to do a pilot's license and to do the basic testing. So I'm just really impressed with what you've put together and that you've taken time to do it thoughtfully and tested it out and grown it a little bit and have a great pathway.
I'm impressed by your sponsorship too.
Yes.
The sponsorship that you guys have gotten is very, and you said there are only 4 programs in the whole state?
Yeah, as of right now, there's,
That's very cool.
yeah, there's like 3 high school programs, and then there's West Michigan Aviation, and then Detroit Public has 1 magnet school. Yeah, it's just the amount of interest that's there from the support side is tremendous. Like you call anybody up, oh yeah, we need people so bad, we'd be happy to help. What do you need?
Yep.
And you might come visit. We'll come see you. Like they're just dying to engage. So it's awesome.
Well, and I have a freshman next year. And so, we went to the open high school orientation, and there are people, my age and older, who are like, oh, things have really changed. And I keep trying to tell them, Grandville has so many amazing options and it's really cool that you have figured out ways for these to meet criteria in an already pretty amazing set of offerings.
Yeah, one of the connection pieces there too is the Robo-Dogs. Right now they have their own drone racing division, and they were in Dallas, and some of the kids we have in this program this year are in it. They're like, oh, I can't believe I get to do this for a class now. This is amazing. But they're getting into aerospace. They want to design the props. They want to like take a 3D printer and print better props that'll make the drone fly faster, and that's just aerospace engineering in high school is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And we're really seeing this at the universities. I just toured 2 aviation programs last week and went through like technology divisions in some of our universities here in the state, and they have the 3D printing, they have car models. It's just so different and so exciting to see all these different STEM opportunities starting here and bleeding into university or just straight to career opportunities. I know the aviation programs out at KCTC have someone in there every other week, another business. So like you've got these connections going already, and they're saying, this is the pathway I can offer you, this is the money I can offer you, this is the tuition I can offer you, this is the salary. It's, it's just opening so many doors.
Sure.
Any more questions or comments? I can go on all night.
Me too.
Great job. I have a question and a comment. Okay. Is there any flight simulators that we can borrow or use as part of this program? Maybe not at our school, but take them there.
Right. So one of our partners here is Le'Veon Aero out in Zealand. One of the reasons to choose them is they have 4 airplanes, a helicopter, and a simulator. So for those kids that are thinking about getting in an airplane but aren't so sure, it's a nice, safe way to go, right? Just, well, try this out. It's just like the real thing. And they actually have people coming there from the airlines to test them before they get hired on to an airline. They go fly that simulator and they get observed while they're flying the simulator. So it's the real deal.
Yeah.
So kids can get on there, or if it's just a bad weather day and they want to fly, they can count some of those hours towards their flight training.
Well, and Le'Veon is actually hosting multiple open houses every week for students from grades 7 through 12 to come out there and try the simulators and learn about aerospace opportunities right now. So if anyone has a child that's thinking about it, free program, you hop out there on a Wednesday night, spend a couple hours in the simulators. It's really exciting.
It will make you sick, but.
I was
gonna say, people throwing
My
up.
comment was my experience
I'll hold
with
the
drone
bucket.
flying and police work is we'd send them in on a search warrant, and the next thing you hear from the drone operator is drone down. They don't know how to fly them very well on the inside, so
Oh.
if they get some practice doing that, that'd be a big help
Yeah.
to that career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
I wondered about you said helicopter. Is that something that is it the same as a plane, or is it?
So
Different?
you still need the same
These
flight
things,
training,
okay.
right, to be able to fly it. But obviously, your flight training is different
Little
and
different.
about 3 to 4 times as expensive.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, an airplane rental is about $120 an hour. A helicopter rental is almost $500. So,
Whoa.
yeah.
Back to that cost, because it is in Michigan, when we were having him do his flight hours, they were half that. So does that would still apply as a program, because we're talking about 18 and under, right? Well, I mean, we would have some seniors, but because they're youth, that would still be your starting price point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only have to be 16. Yeah, and then 17 to pass your test.
Okay, oh, okay.
Anything else?
Nice job.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Well, one final thing with it. Let's take a vote on the aeronautics course proposal. All in favor?
Yes.
And all opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Our second item of regular action business is the operating millage resolution. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the attached resolution, which will place an operating millage restoration levy on the ballot before the electors at a special election to be held on Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right.
Sure. Any questions? We've talked about this a great deal.
We have.
I've got a couple of concerns I've expressed to you, Raj, already. So my experience with millages goes way back. So I've had a lot of experience with them. Some really good, some really bad. Depends on the times. Basically, when times are tight, my experience is they fail. When you ask for, when any part of the ballot says increase, they fail. Times are pretty tight right now for some people. I got kind of a bad feeling about this one. I don't feel like it's gonna pass, at least not in its first attempt. Looking back at the history of things that happened in the city that I worked in, which encompasses part of our district, that just failed a income tax millage last year, 70-30, went down in flames. They're asking, for a 1.5 mil increase on the same day that we're asking for the voters to approve ours. I just have a feeling that it's not gonna go. My suggestion, which you saw in the board notes, was that we extend it for a year or two at the 18 at the current operating, and let's just see where it goes from there. We gotta supplement the amount of funding a little bit with our contingency fund, we can do that. Sounds like there's enough money in there to do that. And additionally, at the Kent ISD meeting the other day, for the financial, state finances, they mentioned that the state is flush with education funds, billions with a B, money coming back to the schools. And I think Heather can expound on that a little bit. So I would consider, or I'd like you all to consider, maybe tabling this for a later ballot proposal, maybe in August or November, that we just table it for now and see where it goes then. I just got a feeling it's going to fail. That's my experience.
If it fails, we would go back. It feels like this is something that we can't just let go. Like it's something we
It's
have.
required.
It's required,
yep.
okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
And part of our plan was to already just do a couple of years, right? It wasn't gonna be a 10-year dealie. Maybe it was 4. Would
Yeah.
you maybe suggest the 2 that Joe's suggesting, or is it just costly to our district to, continually go back and ask?
Yeah, well, I think there are pros and cons
Okay.
to both, and this is a requirement, it is part of our school funding. This doesn't pass, we don't get, was it about 17%, Heather?
Yeah.
About 17%.
Just under
of-
16 million.
Yeah, of the normal funding we get. You're not gonna take care of that with the fund balance we have, unless you wanna drive it back down to a point where we were 8 years ago, where we were 4%.
Our fund balance is
dinged on
only
that
8 million.
too.
Yeah, let's say,
Our fund balance is only 8 million.
Yeah, so,
But the state will ding you if you go below
yeah.
something on your.
They
funding.
will. So,
Okay.
so that's really not the option. We cut it to less than half of what the last time that Grandville in 2013 went for a renewal of this, and it passed, it was for a 10-year cycle. So 2013, so our time's up. So we have to go for it because it runs out in December of 23 this year.
This year.
So we have to go for it. And it really, it's a significant amount of money that every district asks for in the state as part of the school funding formula. So whether you live in Baldwin, Grandville, or, Bloomfield Hills, everyone has this operational part as part of their funding. So it is a requirement. And 18 is the standard. We mentioned 19, knowing, as we'd mentioned before, you can't levy more than 18. But what's happened over, I believe it's the last, is it the 7 years, 8 years?
Since 2016, yeah.
Yeah, we have had a rollback. So when your housing values are higher than the rate of inflation because, you have a thriving community, you get, as part of that formula, your funding gets rolled back automatically. And it never goes back to 18 unless you ask to have it restored back to that 18. If you have 19, you can't levy 19. You can only levy 18. But what it provides, I guess probably for a lack of a better example, it's kind of that 1 mil is the insurance of the fact that if it does roll back like it has the last 7 years or so, that you always can keep it at 18. It's not going to roll back and you consistently lose money every year like we have. We have not gone back. Some people go back for what's called an override, and they go back for that to restore it back. They have a small amount of mills that they ask for in addition to help restore it back to 18. So it's just a different way of doing it, but they'll go back. We did not because, number one, we were getting federal dollars, and the federal dollars were helping us with the support systems we were trying to put in place for our kids. Well, those federal dollars are gone, and they can say they're flush with education money. The foundation, the money in the school aid fund is there, but history tells us that we will get a certain amount, and they will raid that fund for other services throughout the state. So just because it's there doesn't mean that we're going to see it. And I would be very surprised, quite honestly, if we do see, continuous funding like we've had the past couple years with that COVID piece. So when you look at all the pros and cons, could you do a year and do 18? Yes. Is it cost money for an election? Yes. Will you be back next May doing the same thing? Yes. So when we looked at it, we thought, well, if we did 4 years, that's enough time to see kind of see where the economy's at, where it's going. It helps us so we can continue support systems for our kids and not lose a substantial amount of our money we receive per pupil for kids already. And then we can revisit it and figure out what makes the most sense. So when you try to weigh those, 1 year, 4 years, 19 or 18, it's still levying 18 mil. It's a substantial amount of money we lose if it doesn't pass. Every district in Michigan goes for it. They have to, because it's part of the school funding from Proposal A. Those of you that were around in the 1990s probably remember Proposal A, but it's a part of that funding formula.
Have any communities not passed it?
Yes,
So it's happened.
that's happened, and
Okay.
they'll go back and try again.
And try to be more,
And they
get
have
more information, education.
they try to get more information out there. The one thing about the operational mill is it's like I said before, it's not like a bond issue. It's complicated because you explain what a rollback is. You explain it's not a tax on the houses around you here unless they're second homes. If they're the primary home, that's not a tax on your house. It won't be a tax on my house in Grandville. I know that, but when you look at it, it's complicated to explain all of the things that are a part of it, and that's why we've tried to spend a lot of time with you to explain.
Yeah, it's a super complex ballot proposal that there's going to be a lot of people that have a ton of questions on it, and it's another concern. with
Yeah,
it, so.
but that's our job. I mean, we
Right, we
have
answer
to,
it.
we have to go for it, and we have to be able to explain it. And we need opportunities for people to ask questions, and we'll do that. We'll do forums, we'll do Q&A, we'll do a brochure, we'll do a video, we'll do a lot of things. Well, matter of fact, tomorrow at 7:45, we're meeting with a group already to have some discussion about what an operating mill is, to try to help them understand that, so.
If it fails in May, when would it be up again? Would you do it in August?
No, it would be November.
November? So we got 2 chances.
Well, they keep going.
we
I mean,
would-
they got, I don't know.
We technically have March of '24
Okay.
would be the absolute latest for it to go.
I think it's important to acknowledge too that there's lots of types of millages, and what happened in Wyoming City with an income tax that had never occurred. It was on all the individuals basically in the city. It wasn't equitable to, the property tax didn't apply to rent. They had a lot of things that weren't baked completely in that proposal. It was a new tax. It was an increase for the residents. It's not the same thing. This is a non-homestead tax. It's on businesses. Businesses understand and expect 18%. They've had a little bit of break in the last couple of years because of the rollback, but that break has been, balanced with the increased cost of everything else. That's why the break is there. So this is just a restoration.
I
And
completely
businesses want good schools. Good schools bring communities together. They bring people with economic means together. They spend money in the community where they're trying to run their business. So I went out after our last meeting. I've asked other businesses that we operate with, that we connect with, how do you feel? And they said, we definitely support this. They felt very strongly that this was not something that was a negative on their bottom line, not something bad. They said, this is what makes our community, as schools are the base. And that is one of the problems that Wyoming City has, is that they have underfunded some places in their school. They haven't passed some of their school millages, and that has affected their community dramatically, economically and business-wise as well. And so that keeps unraveling over time. And And we see that here. We see the necessity of this. And as they said, it is required, and we need to file it tomorrow. We talked about that last time, so pushing this off is not a good thing. I appreciate the questions, but I honestly think casting doubt on this and comparing it to something that's not the same is honestly irresponsible, because they're gonna look at us as leaders, and we need to understand this very intensely, and that it's normal operating procedure. Every school district in our county has this millage. Every school district in the state of Michigan is required to put this out in front of their voters, and it is a necessary part for us to do normal daily operations here. I appreciate looking at it from that standpoint, but it is not something I feel that we should push it back on in any way or slow down. It is what we have always done. We've passed this for years. Every school district in the state of Michigan nearly has, and those who haven't have to find the gap. And as Roger said, I've been in education 20 years. Just because the state has the money doesn't mean it's coming to us. They're not going to rescue us. If we can't do this, they're not going to go, oh, I'm sorry, you have a $15 million budgeting, here's a check. That it's not going to happen. So we need to do right for our community and for our students, and make sure that we have the funds necessary to continue the excellent education that we have here. We really do.
And just to piggyback off that a little bit, I think we just had in our last presentation is a perfect example of the companies locally that are dying for us to figure out ways how we can support them and get their next level of employees trained, right? We hear that across the board, whether it be in aeronautics, whether it be in manufacturing, whether it be the truck parts companies. Everybody is dying for us to help them, and they see that this cost as part of that, right? That's their investment into the community and into the schools, and that's part of what they're looking for from us, right? And so everyone knows it's not free. That there is a cost to it, and that's what it is. So.
And I've stated this over and over before. We moved here in 2014 specifically for these schools. We lived in South Bend, where people did not invest in their public schools, and so we did private schools. When we came here, these schools are better than the private schools we were in Indiana, and they are worth funding, and they are worth, you ask business people all the time, you defund your schools, you reduce your number of people applying for your jobs, you reduce the people shopping in your businesses, you turn everything works so well here because there is an amazing symbiosis between the schools and the businesses and the parks and the community. And I listen to them talking about the chocolate walk. That's all of our kids. All of our kids are downtown. They are doing the music, they're doing the art, they're in there selling things, they're in bringing business. Everybody goes over to Michigan Moonshine while they're looking at their kids. For better or for worse.
Art, chocolate, and whiskey walk.
That art gets better and better and better. But
it becomes more abstract.
Yeah, it becomes, yeah. So, you're drawing in, we have lived in a school district that did not have strong public schools, and it makes a difference. People buy houses here because they want to go to this school. People shop here. People go to the parks here. It is important.
I'd like to just, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Point of clarification. Joe is not against the 18 mills.
I understand that.
You sort of told him that. But, history in this district tends to be forgotten. This is the third time we're going to renew this. We go for 10 years. People's memories are fading. Do they understand what this levy is about? That's sort of what Joe, I believe, is talking about. I'm not sure who told me, if it was Raj or it was somebody else. Hudsonville goes for their 18 mills every year. And I've talked to some people in Hudsonville, and they're like, hey, it's no brainer. Because they go for it every year. It is top of mind. It is something that they understand leads to the value of their schools. So we've got to pick up from that perspective. So dropping it to 4 years is good.
Do you know Hudsonville's purpose in doing it every year?
No, I do not.
to restore it back to the 18 each time.
Right. I mean, you're basically, if you're going to get a Headley rollback, it's going to only ding you that 0.25% or 0.37% of one. No, I get that piece.
Do we know when they started only voting every year?
No, I don't know.
I would be interested in that because the growth of Hudsonville is exponential right now. Like, there are tiny homes going for $300,000 because people just want to move into Hudsonville, or Byron Center as well. So it would be really interesting to see when they started this renewal every year. I would love to find that out.
But Bob, that's what I was going to say. I think 10 years, our community hasn't dealt with this.
Yeah,
They haven't
for
even
sure.
thought about this. And so I really think that's part of our mission, is to let them know how we, started off really thinking 10 years was a good idea. But it's hurt our district when we get those rollbacks, correct? We lose money, and that's not good for our programming. So can we solve it by this measure? And I think that's it, that we don't remember that this is important in our operations and all these things that have been said.
That's a good point.
And I'm not speaking for Joe. Joe
No, I
can
know.
speak on his own, but I'm okay. I bought into this. I'm there. But if we're going to do this in 4 years, we better be ready for what we're going to do, and we better educate our community. And you know that, Raj. This is nothing new. We let this, times have changed. And again, history. I'm going to tell you, other than somebody buying a house and they have to declare non-homestead, 30 years ago, that was a big thing. Now, nobody thinks about it, right? So we've got some education to do. But
I agree.
We're teachers.
I think we do, but it seems like every year somebody's going for it. So you're always reading about this every year. Every year some district's going for it. Because I haven't voted for this in 10 years, but I know I've read about it every year in the last 10 years because other districts are going for it, right? So I agree with you, we need to educate, and we need to educate locally. But to say that, people have no clue what this is about because it has been 10 years, I don't know. I'm not
if you're not paying attention
there.
to it, I don't agree with that. I don't think if you're paying attention to it in your area, if you're going to pay that much attention to it.
School funding's complicated. I think we continuously have to educate. I get questions all the time, why did you build this and you didn't pay for this book? They're from different funds. There's different ways that we receive money and we're allowed to spend money. Why can't you move this desk to this new building? Because the law says you can't. You got to buy new equipment. There's a lot of things that go into it that I agree that we need to continuously educate. The thing that has me spicy is casting doubt on it or comparing it to things that are completely different. The word millage is a really big word. It's like saying automobile, but every car is not the same. And so we need to really dissect that and understand what the comparison is in other communities and what the actual thing is. Because we are not an income tax here, it's not on individuals, and it's not an increase, it's a restoration. And we would be asking for that restoration every single year at a cost to our district for that election too.
Right, and my point is not,
Yeah.
first of all, I understand that it's apples to oranges.
Right.
It's an election process that had failed. Obviously, it has nothing to do with that. It's income tax, right?
Right.
I get it. If we ask for a one-year continuation at the 18, we can go back the next year and ask for a 5-year, depending on how things are. That's my point, is we're kind of pinning ourselves into a bad spot, in my opinion. Because I think if it goes down this time, we got to ask for it again in November. I would just soon ask for it in November if we're going to ask for an increase and make it different than the one coming up in May, just because there's already going to be an increase out there. Is the city of Grandville asking for an increase in anything else? Do you know? To the voters?
I don't think so. I think it was Wyoming, and then there's 2 other districts that are also going for operating renewal within Kent County.
Who's going to come out and vote no on that millage? I almost guarantee you if they see increase on ours, it's going to be a no vote for us. And that's just the historical, my experience, and that is a millage. So
Even if we go,
It's a
that's just my
restoration.
experience.
It's not, we have it already. The existing one is at 18.
Yes.
And it has rolled back. And so It's a restoration back. It's essentially, we can't use the word renewal because we're not in the right cycle to use the word renewal, but it is the same, effectively the same thing.
Correct.
It's reestablishing what already exists in our community.
If you go for 18 for 1 year, the language will still state on the ballot, will still state increase. That's the legal requirement that we have to follow.
Okay. Okay.
Just one more point. We're on this board to debate.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So the word when you said casting doubt, I think that was a little harsh. Because we are the public. We represent the public.
Absolutely.
So we should be debating this
For sure.
like this.
I mean the doubt in comparing it to something that it's not the same. And we also want to speak to the best. So it's good to dissect things. It's good to understand everything that we're putting in front of us. It's good to talk about it for certain. It is, I don't feel like it's good to say that this is something that isn't, shouldn't, and wouldn't exist. It's something that does exist now. It's at 18 now. That's how our language is. That's how it's passed now. And we are restoring it and continuing. We're asking to continue a normal business operating procedure that every school in the state of Michigan has. And so I feel frustrated with casting doubt on a normal, expected, and required process for the state of Michigan. That's where my frustration is at, but not in debating, not in talking about it. I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm happy to high five on the way out the door, whatever decision we make as a board too. But I think it's important that we choose our words wisely when debating, because it is a very expected and normal and required piece of our responsibility as a school board to put this in front of the voters. And it's not irresponsible to do it, and it's not something that it's unwise to do. It's something that we have to do. And I want to make sure that as much as people don't understand the ins and outs of school finance sometimes, and we're here debating it, they might not understand our words either. So they might take one word from this moment and hold on to it. And that's the thing. And it's not the same as Wyoming's income tax proposal.
And in defense of education, I have watched Roger talking about this for many, many meetings. I have listened to Heather. I have learned an enormous amount. I can be very truthful in saying that when we first started discussing mills, I mean, it was great because I'm on the Parks and Recs as well, and Ken Crombeen did the most simplified explanation of mills. I loved it. And I was like, oh, okay, I can understand that. So it becomes an issue of, I do think that we are doing a lot of education. Can we do more? Of course. Can we talk about the impact that having strong schools has on businesses? Can we talk about the business owners? I actually just talked to the owner of Michigan Moonshine. I am bringing that up a lot.
Yeah, you are.
And he is here because he loves the Grandville community. We had a euchre tournament there specifically for an elementary school. We bring him so much business, you know? So I think that we worry a little bit about, yes, we do talk about businesses. I am the daughter of a factory owner. I understand businesses supporting schools and public institutions, and my father did it happily. And I think a lot of the businesses here do it happily.
I guess, just a question for you, Joe. Why do you, so whether it fails because it's a 4-year term or whether it fails because it's a 1-year term, you're saying it's going to fail. So I'm just trying to understand the logic behind moving it to 1 year if you think in any type of millage is going to fail.
So I think if we move it to a 1 year, request a 1 year continuation of the 18 mill, my assumption was it wouldn't have the word increase on the ballot. Without the word increase on there, it'd be more likely to pass.
So because it's going to have the increase on it, whether it's 1 year or 4, you feel
like people are going to go in and vote no on a millage, a 1.5 increase, they're going to vote no, and those same people are going to vote no on ours with the word increase on it.
So whether or not it's 1 year or 4 year at this point doesn't matter to you.
If it has the word increase.
Okay,
No.
so
Even when it's not
So
home.
you're just saying that, hey, I'm in support of this, we need to do this, but I think it's going to fail. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying it's, yes.
Okay, fair
Essentially, yeah.
enough.
I mean,
I'm just trying to
if it's
clarify,
gonna
yeah.
stay at 18, I think it would pass with flying colors, no problem. And I'm thinking 1 year, because if we go 1 year and it's rolled back, we can then go to the voters and say, listen, we really need this increase now. We tried it for a year. We gave it our best effort. We rolled back even more. We had to supplement those monies with some out of our contingency fund or rainy day fund or whatever you want to call it.
But if we
And
go
now-
to 18 for 1 year, it doesn't roll back, because we have to go back again next year and get 18. It will never roll back if we go every year.
But I
Right?
don't want to go
It'll only
I don't
roll
want to
back
go
for that
every
year.
year for the
Yep,
rest
say
of
it again.
eternity. Just a 1 year term now with multiple years a year from now.
If it's at 18,
Yep,
we just do 1 year.
yep.
It rolls back.
To
Let's say
what?
1/4%.
Yeah.
We're at 17.75 for that year. We reset the next year. We're not stuck with a 10-year 18 that slowly
But if we pass an
decreases.
18, then you're saying, and again, I'm just trying to understand. So if we pass an 18, we could still get an effective Headley rollback that same year, even though it's only a 1 year?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay,
because it's
that's
for
what I didn't
20
understand, yeah.
because it's for 2024.
If it's for 2024, got it, got it.
So it's for that tax year.
It's for
But
that
if you
tax
go
year.
to 19, you won't have to pay that roll back. It'll cover it.
Got it. No, yeah, I understand
Right, you
that portion.
understand that part.
I understand that portion of it. I was just
Okay.
trying to understand if we went to
If
the
it's
1 year,
just-
how does it roll
Hopefully.
back?
Hopefully.
It's because it's the
Yeah, as long as
2024 year.
Property values don't
Correct.
go bananas.
Yeah.
Which they
Correct.
never stop.
You want
All
a
right.
roll call? Lily, or-
Yes.
Gardine,
Yes.
Palmer, yes. DeHaan,
Yes.
Steffes,
No.
Wondergen,
Yes.
Hybor,
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we are moving to our reports and discussion period. We have a learning report.
Sure. Dr. Merkel is with us.
Thank you. So we talked about learning progress at the beginning of the year. After wrapping up last year in some summer school, we are here back as part of our 98C grant funding through the Michigan Department of Education to provide a mid-year update. As you know, and I'll talk more about this, that we benchmark our kids 3 times a year. And so now we just put together all of our benchmark assessments, K-8, for the mid-year, and wanted to share some trends with that's relatively current with where we are. So a couple of different slides, and I want to start very big picture. We hear a lot about statewide learning loss and the trends, so this is a comparison to our NWEA MAP growth scores. The Michigan learning trends are only provided us 3rd through 8th grade, but you can see those hover right below or around 50% being at proficient in those grade levels. Those are a drop of around 3 to 6%. From where they were in the fall of 2019. The comparison, where we started 2022, you'll see our lower grades are actually ahead of where they were. And I didn't, for our scores, you'll see up there, I put a pre-COVID average. Rather than just one snapshot of the fall of 2019, I took an average of the 3 years before COVID and used that score for each of those.
Why would you do that, Scott?
Just because, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, just because it gives a wider range view of an average of typically where we are. We will vary, and you'll see some scores, we'll vary entering 1st grade just based on different classes of kids. They may vary. And so taking a 3-year average, I felt, gave a better picture of where we are typically over those couple of years pre-COVID. So you'll notice, and this is just NWEA for reading in comparison, our fall of 2022 scores where we entered the year dropped down in the upper grades. And then looking at the end of year, where students enter the school year is certainly important, but where they exit the year is potentially more important. So our NWEA map growth in reading on the left-hand side, you can see that in the spring of 2022, in our early grades, we exceeded our pre-COVID 3-year average. And we talked about this at the beginning of the year. What we were finding, which is representative across the country, is that those upper grades are hit a little harder due to complex skills. The complexity of skills in those upper grades are a little harder to catch up. In addition, you'll notice that that third grade group was actually the kindergarten group of the COVID year. So when you get into what are now 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, those were 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, they're just amping up the complexity of skills, which are a little harder to catch up on. I would also draw attention to the Acadience reading. For those who have been around for a while, that's Acadience. It used to be Dibbles. They changed names. That's our reading screener 3 times a year. It's just a minute subtest measuring fluency and accuracy of reading. We're not quite to pre-COVID levels on Acadience. And that's another reason why we love NWEA. We've used it for nearly 20 years. But that's one snapshot. We have to triangulate data, and Acadience gives us a good measure to know that we don't want to put too much confidence in one assessment. We want to look across the board at where we are. But you will also see that our lower grades are closer to catching those pre-COVID benchmarks than our upper grades. So it does validate that in reading. This is the most current snapshot.
Can you go back real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, go forward. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to get your readings on your, because they're changing.
Okay. Say more about that, changing how readings.
Go back one slide. Look at your legend. Now go forward one slide.
Oh, I see.
You're using the same colors and it's
the
messing with my
percentiles.
head.
Gotcha. Okay. And
the time periods.
I'll make sure I share this out. Yes. So this was spring of 22 where we ended last school year. This is now winter of now. This was our most recent benchmark for both MAP and Acadience. And the blue compares that to where were we last year versus where are we this year. Moving past that, and I'll talk a little bit about the rationale, but this is one reason why we continue to be optimistic in our work. Not only were we starting the fall a little ahead of where we were the previous year, but our winter shows that same growth in both tests this time, not just one. You see those lower grades are very comparable to where we were last year, but you see that growth that we're having in those upper grades where that is accelerated learning in those higher level skills. So we're ahead of where we were this time last year, which hopefully shows that the efforts that we are undertaking are working. And I'll make sure everybody has access to this exact presentation.
Can you email it?
Absolutely.
I don't want to go to the folder. Don't make me go to Google.
No. Okay. Can I? Is a PDF okay?
I love PDFs.
All right. You got it. So let me transition to math. So the same view on the statewide learning trends you see on the left-hand side for the state of Michigan, a very similar viewpoint to what it was for reading. From the fall of 19 to the fall of 2022, dropping between 6 percentage points. It's actually a little higher in math for the state of Michigan, but they were hovering around the 50th percentile now, just mid-range 40s. Our math scores, again, reflect what we saw in reading as well, where our lower grades are actually outperforming that 3-year average, but we dip down in those upper grades again. And our hypothesis is due to those higher level skills. It's easier to catch up when there are fewer skills that you miss, and as those become more complex, you have different gaps for kids.
Can you tell from the data, is there like a group of kids that have caught up a lot, and then there's some that are lagging, so that they average out to where they're at now, or is it?
No. For our data, and I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit, just the individualization, we can't overgeneralize. The one generalization we can make is those students with higher attendance rates, higher missed school rates, have bigger gaps. That's logical.
And you mean in the current years, correct? Or are you talking?
Well, going back over the last couple of years.
Okay, all right.
Those students that missed more school
Yeah.
had bigger gaps.
Sure.
So this is our current math achievement. I'm sorry, this is spring of 2022. So this is where we ended last school year. You'll see the blue is the baseline pre-COVID, and then spring of 22. Again, that reflection of our lower grades doing well at the end of last year, and then we dropped down into 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And some room to make up, particularly in 5th grade. And then winter, right now, this is what we just finished. You see one graph here because for math, aside from our classroom assessments, we have the map. We don't have the screener like we do for reading, although our math team is actually looking into that because they want another data point. But the winter of 22 versus the winter of 23, interestingly, it flip-flops a little bit. We see our lower grades, especially that kindergarten, and that's one that fluctuates year to year, just depending on, we're seeing, our kindergarten teachers feel that we're seeing some impacts of lower preschool participation numbers and those types of things, which we expect to rebound into next year already. But we are excited to see right now that our upper grades are performing higher at this point now than they did last year. We feel like we're catching up on some of those, and we're anxious to see the year-end components. So a couple of talking points, and you've already brought these up, right? The first thing is we want to use caution in comparing any of our current status to what you might hear nationally or even statewide, and there are a number of reasons for that. The first thing is approach. Districts handled the pandemic differently. We knew in March 13th of 2020, I still remember we were sitting in that room and I didn't even understand what was going on. When, like, really, we're going to close down? I don't understand this. But from that moment, as we started to plan the 2021 school year, our approach was very specific about maintaining in-person learning. We had about 80% of our students in person that year. We offered that 20% remote, but we did something, and I give Mr. Barrett a lot of credit on this one. We did something that a lot of districts didn't do, and even our virtual classes were live classes. A lot of people relied on canned individualized programs for that large percentage of students, and we didn't do that. We maintained connection with our Grandville teachers. So I think our approach is one reason. And the second thing is we made a commitment to maintain our system. In the school year of 2021, it was not easy and would have been very easy to just, we're gonna do school during the day, we're gonna keep our head above water, but we made a commitment to benchmark every student that we could 3 times a year. And we progress monitored those that were behind, and that included our virtual students. Our Acadience testers, who are mostly our retired teachers, they're a tremendous team, learned how to do it virtually. And we set a schedule for every kid that was at home learning virtually, and we tested them, and we provided teachers with feedback, and we communicated with parents. And so even our approach over that year, our teachers worked hard, and we all heard that. But I think our kids benefited because of it. The second talking point is this is a snapshot. We want to be optimistic about winter 2023 scores, but it's one data point. We want to look at how we're doing. But again, our system focuses on continued assessment. We're going to continue to assess. We're going to assess 3 times a year. Every student that's below, that's in an intervention, we're progress monitoring every 2 weeks. So our people are doing a ton of work on that, and they're really monitoring that level of progress, particularly in reading, but we have some math interventions going on. And so our goal is to maintain focus on those individual needs. So Brett, that's a great question about, can we generalize? Do we see different groups? From a big picture, we know attendance matters, and we know our low SES group was hit hardest, but we really just want to look at every individual kid, and that's what our system allows us to do. And then again, our action summary is something I'm really proud of, just in terms of how hard our people are working. We're continuing with that benchmark 3 times a year. We're using data. They're meeting at least 4 times a week in intervention groups. But also our team added intervention support to every building. That was something that we did. So we added intervention teachers at every elementary school, not just our title buildings, but everyone. And we've added intervention support at our secondary levels to support kids, and that's been really exciting. Some of it is just case managing, touching in with kids and talking about what help do they need on their homework. And then it's more than that. We have added before and after school tutoring where it's needed in every building. And then we've even expanded, I talked about it last time, but our contract with Sylvan Learning Center, we've continued as well. So families who can't, for whatever reason, can't make it work with a before or after school tutoring, if they can do something on their time, then we're contracting with them to do that. And for the first time, Sylvan came into our high school. The last thing I'll share, I was the first week back, I stop up at our high school, and Matt Bird, who is one of our intervention support people that we hired at the high school, he just happened to stop me because we had met before. He was showing me all the great data he has on kids. He said, Scott, I got to tell you, we had Sylvan come in before break. They met with 9 of our kids. They assessed them in reading and math, but then we set up tutoring sessions for before exams. He said, I had 5 kids pass classes that they would not have passed without that support.
That's great.
So it's micro level, but that's 5 passing grades for kids that maybe wouldn't have otherwise. So we're really proud of the work. Our teachers are doing great stuff, and they're really, really working hard, in particular our intervention people in their work with the teachers. So we're excited to share that with you. I will get you a copy. I'll share everybody the PDF as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
We had the board update, and it had talked about a $200 million plan for expanding tutoring services. That will also go into affecting more of this micro level work, correct?
Yeah, so part of that is monies that is specifically allocated for tutoring services. We've broken it down by building and encouraged them to get their systems up and running for however it works for their kids.
Awesome, thanks.
And it includes summer school, so we'll have some information soon in the next 3 to 4 weeks out about summer school K-12.
Can you go back to the first slide, please?
Yep.
All right. So you're comparing us to Michigan, right?
Yep.
So tell me if I'm wrong, because I hear it all the time. Michigan is 33 out of 50. Is that true? Are we 32? Where are we, Scott?
Well, I can't speak for the Michigan Department of Education, but I would ask in specific with what? Because I just saw something
specific is, here's
last
my
week
question.
that gave Michigan number 6.
But
it's a different metric.
It's all dependent on what metric and which companies.
And I understand
doing
that. You pretty much interpolated baselines,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I think you could do the same thing, but even give me a top 5 state that might be doing similar testing and compare us to that. Because
Okay.
if Michigan, I'm sorry, unless you give me the documentation that says we're number 6,
I'll find
I'm
it
not
for
going to
you.
believe it.
Yeah.
So
it would depend on the
that's what I
metric.
want the comparison.
Okay, so I will pull, I'll take a look at all the states that they have NWEA testing for.
Fine.
I'll run these same numbers and I'll send them to you.
I would love that, because that should be the comparison, please.
You got it.
So, my next question. we've not seen any data on the school climate survey on any grade that it was given to. And why is that?
It's coming in the next MTSS update. I just talked to Jason today. He said he's working on that now.
So this is the second year, but we didn't even get it for the first year.
It should have been.
I don't believe we did. I would have remembered it.
I think it was in the annual MTSS update.
Okay. So
But I will make sure you get that soon.
So when you give us that, give us the first 2 years, okay?
Okay, sure.
All right. Because I'm not crazy about it, especially the first several questions about
Okay.
demographics. And I don't understand that. And I also would like to know the breakdown of those that want to opt out of it. Because do we actually have strong statistical data because of that? What are we losing and what are we not getting? Which means if we're doing that, is there a need to do all of these demographic questions? You don't have to answer me tonight, but that's
Okay.
what I want to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we
Yeah.
actually pull NWEA data on other states right now?
Yeah.
I have US
Okay.
News and World.
I mean, I know we can pull our national norm expectation, but current to this
Yeah.
term?
Yeah,
Okay.
where I pulled that graph, I think I can differentiate other states.
Okay.
So I would say.
I don't know exactly which ones do NWA.
I just want to make sure
I
we
would say
have
we can
a
do
fair
all that.
expectation of metrics that
And
we can
it
get right
just,
now.
it gives you information, like the state gives you information. We know we're not the state and we're not, I mean, there's so many different groups that are tied up in that. I mean, could we look at another district similar in demographics to us and similar in funding to us and all that? We have data like that. I think what this is trying to show is the kids here in Grandville, based on something that we've given for a long time, and we're very fortunate that we've been given, NWA map as an example, but how are our kids doing over time? And in looking at comparisons and looking at some trend data and making comparisons now to that trend data is very important. I think that just shows you, it shows you what Michigan is, and I agree. It doesn't tell you a lot in comparison to us, but at the same time, it's good to know where Michigan is, and it's good to know, here's our data. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have the Michigan data there, but yeah, we're not saying we're trying to compare ourselves to the state of Michigan.
I like the red baseline data comparison, so we know where we
Yeah.
were and where we go.
Right.
On the red baseline data, could you drop the national norm expectation too, so we know where we would hope a seventh grader would be pre-COVID with
Yeah,
with
so that
NWA's
percentage
data?
is based on the national norm. It's that percentage. So take a look at seventh grade red line, 73, thank you.
Yeah.
73.2% are considered at benchmark or passing
Yeah.
or at grade level based on the national norm comparative.
And is that national norm getting reconfigured since the world is no longer norm?
Yeah, we expect it to, but they haven't announced when yet. I think
Okay.
they're waiting. My opinion is I think they're waiting for some leveling, right?
Yeah, like probably 3 years worth of.
Yeah, at least.
Data, okay.
And those were most recently normed in 2020, right before the pandemic. So,
So if you're not familiar with NWEA, they all across the whole nation, but they take that data and they recalculate it every so many years to make sure that they're more accurately comparing schools across the nation. And so that's what we're talking about. They did one in 16 and 20, and now here we are with numbers that are just unusual. Thanks, Scott. Any more questions or? That was good.
when I send this, of course, we're always happy to answer any follow-up questions. Obviously, we're not going to we can't share individual student level data, but if you have specific school level questions or grade level questions or otherwise, we're always happy to engage and answer those.
I will say, I would like to share this one thing that was from the Grandville High School orientation evening. And it talks a lot about how we are a Cognia accredited school, National Blue Ribbon Award winner school, Michigan Blue Ribbon exemplary school. We have a 99% graduation rate with the class of 2022. We have 83% of Grandville High School graduates enroll in post-secondary education immediately after high school. We have high school graduates that have been accepted to Harvard, University of Michigan, Purdue, Notre Dame, Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago, Princeton, Yale, USC, Oberlin, the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, West Point, and NYU. So I would say that I am extremely proud of the work you guys are doing to make sure that our kids are on track. This was the class of 2022 we're talking about. I understand that we have some work to do, but I also understand that I am in another school district, and I am friends with several people in other school districts, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our people are doing a great job. Thank you. Yeah, and those failure rates, and spoiler, we're really excited about our track on failure rates, and we're going to share that at the end of the year. We're not,
Thank you,
we're not
Scott.
ready on that.
That'd be good.
That'd be good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Next report and discussion is on school funding.
Yes.
All the great topics tonight. All the fun. Moonshine, learning loss, and dollar bills.
All right, school funding, kind of the basics here, although you guys already alluded to it earlier. It's not easy. So here is an accounting definition of what is a fund: an independent fiscal and accounting entity with a self-balancing set of accounts, assets, liabilities, resources, and fund balance, which are segregated for the purpose of carry on specific activities in accordance with special regulations, restrictions, or limitations. So more simply stated, it is a bucket to contain money for a particular purpose with particular rules that we must follow. In Grandville, we have 7 different types of funds. We have the general fund, which houses our everyday operations. So maintenance, classroom, lights, heat, transportation, all of that. The general fund gets the majority of its revenue from the state through a foundation allowance, non-homestead operating tax levy, and the federal funding. We have a food service fund, which the only thing that can go into that food service fund is anything that has to do with the preparation of meals to our students and staff. So if we have, we do have staff that works in food service, their wages may be charged to that fund. General fund wages cannot be charged there. We also have a student activity fund, which is really an in and out fund. It is for students who are fundraising money for whether it's field trips, prom, those types of items. That's a very small fund, roughly holds around $300,000. At times it can be as high as $600,000. But again, it is really money coming in and going right back out for a specific fundraising purpose. We have our debt fund, which is a tax levy from approved bond issues that were sold. Essentially, again, it is the mortgage on our buildings, basically. So what runs in and out of that fund are principal and interest payments on those bond issues. In Grandville, we have a sinking fund, which was another tax levy that voters approved. Again, it has to be used for specific purposes. There is a list online on MDE's website of what allowable sinking fund uses are. Boilers, roofs. Technology is a big no-no out of the sinking fund. And recently, the legislature amended it to include buses. However, in Grandville, because our levy was already approved prior to the buses being allowed, we cannot buy buses with our sinking fund dollars at this time.
Until we go back for
Correct.
another vote or? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct. Until, again, that sinking fund has the same type of term as the operating levy. So once that is, up for maturity, that was when we would look to go back. We have 2 capital projects funds, so we had a bond issue pass in 13, and those bonds were subsequently issued in 3 different series. 2013, 2015 have been fully spent. We have a small amount left in 2019. And then we have the most recent from November of 2019. Series 1 was issued in 2020. Series 1 has been fully spent. We are currently in Series 2. That was just issued, I think it was May of 22. So, and then we have an agency fund, which is really cool because not all schools have this, but we have some scholarship funds on hand there that we have to hold, and specifically those have to follow the rules that we're given. There's application processes for some of those. All the interest that's earned in those accounts goes back to those scholarship funds. So when we combine all of these funds, the business office manages just under $125 million annually. Revenue, it consists of 4 categories, and the majority of these slides that come up we're going to talk about will be general fund specifically, but there are typically 4 categories of revenue. There's your local revenue, your state revenue, federal, and then interdistrict or transfer. So interdistrict, we have Region 3 programs where we send kids to Byron Center for a MySci or a MoSci program. We in Grandville house 2 Regional 3 programs. One is our transitions program, and the other is we have an ASD program, which is a K-12 continuum within our region. Our region consists of Byron, Wyoming, Kelloggsville, Godfrey Lee, Godwin, Grandville. So again, where does it come from? General fund, the majority of our local revenue is from taxes, program fees, so tuition-based preschool, Medicaid that we receive, and investments. State revenue mainly consists of the foundation allowance and then categorical different funds, and those can vary from year to year. Federal funds typically pre-COVID were Title and IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Right around May of 2020, we started receiving ESSER funds, and then ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan. Just changed, for whatever reason, they changed the name of ESSER to ARP. And then again, our interdistrict, we receive county-wide millages, like our Act 18 special ed millage runs through the ISD. The enhancement mill runs through the ISD, and then transfer, really the only transfer our district has is from food service into the general fund to cover some indirect charges. And there is a formula, so you can't just take as much as you want from food service. You have to follow the formula that the state provides. Again, you can see from a local level for food service, our meal sales and caterings, we get a small categorical from the state, and then the federal government has National School Lunch Program and National School Breakfast Program reimbursements that we receive too. Again, student activities, just fundraisers, our debt fund, taxes and investments, sinking fund, taxes and investments, and then capital projects are bond proceeds and investments as well. And agency fund is local with scholarships. So in 2022, our general fund audited revenue was just over $72 million. And you can see the blue, 20% is local, and the big piece of the pie is the state funding. So to really understand the state funding, you have to understand Proposal A and that reform. It reduced the property tax burden on individuals back in '94, and it increased the role of the state taxes to finance public education. Sales tax increased from 4% to 6%. Created the foundation allowance to distribute state funding, and it established a per pupil funding floor to each district. currently, out of the 550 districts and PSAs in the state of Michigan, there are only a handful that are out of formula. Everyone else now has the same base foundation. And I'll give you an example of an out of formula. Covert, Michigan has a power plant that is very valuable to that area. And so they have been out of formula since Proposal A, which means they don't get foundation from the state because their property value is so much higher that they're allowed to levy, they just get the property value. So they're getting just the local non-homestead operating mill. They're not even getting state aid.
Wow.
And there's a handful of districts like that, a couple of them on the east side of the state. So, just to show you what it did to the funding system, 93, 94, you can see the majority. I think I've showed you this slide before. Majority was locally funded, so homeowners, taxes, and the state kicked in a smaller amount. 94, 95, after Proposal A passed, the state now owns the burden of the majority of the funding. Well, through sales tax. So I just threw this slide in here. This is year-end 2022, and you can see that our pie looks a lot like the 94, 95 pie. So inverted that relationship with that passing. We're paid our state aid payments over 11, or state aid over 11 payments, October to August, and that's because the state's year-end is September. So we don't receive a payment during that time. 22-23 base foundation is $91.50 for per pupil, and we are back to our 90-10 blend. There was a formula, a lot larger formula during COVID to help with the impact of losing students for all districts. So they have now gone back to the 90-10. Special ed obligation, so this is formula based on prior year special ed expenditures. So we have our special ed costs, and it multiplied by the 28% plus our special ed transportation costs multiplied by the 70%. So we do get a reimbursement from the state based on those costs. Special ed is not fully funded. However, this year in 22-23, they did take a step to work towards that, where we get this amount, and then 75% of the of the $91.50 for every special ed student that we service. And then there's categorical funding, and the thing with categorical funding is it's typically restricted, and it covers some unfunded mandates. Primarily, the biggest one is the MIPSers, the cost offset, or the unrealized actuarial liability. In Grandville, we get just under $6 million, and we pay out just under $6 million for that MIPSers liability. And then at risk, while still not fully funded, the state did make a nice contribution for this school year to bump up our at-risk funding as well. And that's based on our prior year free and reduced rates. Federal revenues, they're all reimbursement based. So we spend it and sometimes we don't know if we're gonna get it or not, the money, basically. So typically, like, for instance, we start out in September, kids come back and we're still offering Title I services, but our plan may not have been approved at that point in time, or they've only issued 85% of a normal amount to us. So again, reimbursement based, so we are, pre-funding that, I guess, if you will. So, but Title I is economically disadvantaged census data is what drives those dollar amounts. Title II helps with some professional development, and it also helps some of our local private non-public schools also. And then Title III, we have two different Title III grants. One is limited English and one is immigrant. And then probably one of the biggest ones is our Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that flows through the ISD to us. Again, ESSER and ARP, and then on the food service side, National School Lunch Program. So 2022 general fund audited federal revenue, that 65% of the pie is ESSER and ARP. Of that 5.5 million, approximately 3 million of that is the ESSER and ARP funding. In a normal, I don't want to say normal, in a pre-COVID year, IDEA would make up the majority, followed by title. But those are usually around 2 million, 2.5 million total.
And this ends in 2024?
Yeah, so ESSER 3 and 11T are slated to be done by September 30th of 2024.
And is that when you have to spend those dollars by, or do you have more?
That is when we should have spent those dollars by, because there is a little bit of a wiggle room, but we'll maybe get you to December of 24. So again, interdistrict transfers, examples are Act 18 funding, which is a special ed millage that is a countywide millage. Enhancement millage is, again, another countywide millage. And then Dean Transportation, or Kent ISD, has a contract to help provide transportation for students with disabilities, ECSE students. And so what happens is Kent fronts that bill and then sends us an invoice. It's, again, formula-based by ridership and number of miles. So, and then Region 3 tuition. Like I said, we house 2 programs, but then Wyoming houses one and Byron houses one as well that we send kids to.
Now, the real quick on the dean.
Yeah.
Does that also include students that have received their certificate of completion and are going to Mayfield?
It does.
Or Strait or Lincoln?
Yes.
That's, okay.
Yep. That's cool. And then again, finally, the indirect transfer to food service. So where does it go? General fund, 80 to 85% annually is salary and benefits. Purchase services consists of sub-costs, custodial, daycare, and software purchases. And then every building and every department has a supply budget, and those are carry forward budgets. So they're not dinged if they don't spend it all in one year. We really want to stress, the importance of doing as much as you can in the current school year with your building budget. However, if there's something you're saving up for, we don't want buildings to feel like if I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. So that's what we do with that. Capital outlay in general fund, it's mainly just vehicles, buses, some equipment. And then the itinerants, which, so our psychs, social workers, speech, OT, they are on the Kent ISD's payroll. However, they follow our master agreement, our GEA agreement. And there's a cost benefit to Grandville and Kent County schools to do that. So we get a higher reimbursement on our special ed costs to do that. So when I show you the graph of salaries and benefits, just know that I've got people in this other category that we have to add those 2 pieces of the pie together to get our 80 to 85%.
Is it 12 years? How long have we been doing that?
So I've been here since 2010, and it was this way when I started.
All right. I know it's been a long time. It was a major advantage.
Yeah. Not every county does it. Where I was previously was a different county, and they did not do this. Food service, salaries and benefits are about 40 to 45% of the costs. Purchase services typically have to do with repairs. And then our food costs fall around 45 to 48%. And capital outlay, ovens, registers, and last year you approved a new food truck purchase. So, I do want to boast that, and not every district does this either, but we cover the credit card fees for parents who deposit money electronically to food service. So that in a year, well, pre and post, I guess, it's been about $18,000 annually, and I think that's just a great benefit because we are a self-op food service, and Jeff does an amazing job. So
We do. We have, and some of the lowest rates in Kent and Ottawa County.
yes.
Jeff's amazing.
Again, too, you can see on those other funds, it seems like there's not a whole lot going on in the other funds, but there really is, especially when you get down into the capital projects currently.
They're more compartmentalized.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So 2022, we ended the year expenditure-wise, 71.6 million. You can see the big 80% of the pie's salaries and benefits. That 5% is that other, so we are between 80 and 85% of salaries and benefits. Purchase services, 9%. I mean, a big part of that is our sub costs. And then supplies, and you can see capital outlay only is about 1%.
Oh, not.
And I can't take credit for this. Joe's already seen this, but I did steal it from Kevin Phillips' presentation because, it's really simple, right? But I've got a great staff. I've got a great team downstairs. Not to mention the admin team here that I sit in meetings with a lot. So make it fun, and I kind of like this stuff. So
Good. Thank goodness.
Well done.
Yes, absolutely.
That
Thank
was
you.
great.
Yeah.
Heather, can you send that to us?
yes.
And on top of just keeping all of this straight and what has to come out of where, I just also want to commend you for always looking for opportunities to save us money too. I mean, you are always one step ahead of a rate change, a bond opportunity, anything we can to save money, and that's made all the difference in us being able to keep our rates low in our community, lower than anywhere else. Really around here for the services that we provide. So we appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? All right, well done. Thank you. Okay, we're moving to the public comment section of our evening. Mr. Hybor is going to keep track of time over here. Each individual will receive 5 minutes. And he will provide a 1-minute warning at 4 minutes, just to let you know to wrap up your comments. Please remember that when you are speaking to us, you're speaking to the Board of Education, and that you may speak in any fashion that you wish about any content pertaining to the board. Please make sure that you keep your comments respectful, and that if they violate the rights of others in any way under the law of defamation of character or individual privacy, that you consult with your legal counsel before saying these things. That all being said, we have about 6 individuals, and we will start with Mr. Lynn Jansen and follow up with Ruth Rondon after that.
Hello, board. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm Lynn Jansen. I live in the district. I want to tell you about some of the exciting things happening with Grandville Parents for Education. We're excited to have Joe Steffes on the board. We supported him. We're excited to have Bob Wonderdam returning. We supported him as well. There was another conservative candidate that we were unable to support just because of there being 2 open seats and 3 conservatives running. Our district spoke very firmly. It was a very conservative vote. I certainly hope this board starts to acknowledge that. I hope that the board president will treat the newly elected Mr. Steffes with a little more respect, asking questions about how to appropriately levy tax dollars is not irresponsible. Waiting until the night before it has to be filed, that is. But no, Mr. Steffes, we appreciate you asking questions every once in a while, government entities should have to think, what if we dealt with a little bit less? It doesn't seem to be a question that we ever ask. Grandville Parents for Education is forming a PAC because of the position we found ourselves in this last election with 3 candidates running for 2 seats. We're going to make sure that we have the financial resources to fund the next races with the appropriate amount of well-funded candidates who will represent the parents of this district. Again, we're really happy that the 2 that we supported won, and we're going to make sure that going forward, the parents of this district are well represented. Finally, it is absolutely government think to show how we are doing worse while asking for more money. Comparing ourselves to the state, the bad ideas of Grandville are not made better because the rest of the state had worse ideas. This board failed us for the last 2 years, 3 years. Comparing ourselves to other districts who failed worse does not make us look better. Thank you very much.
Next up, Ruth Rondon, followed by Jacqueline Pullman.
I'm going to pass Kim, thank you.
Okay, thanks for being here. Jacqueline Pullman, followed by Alan Traxler, please.
Hello. I feel like these meetings have always kind of been a little bit negative, so I really want to share something positive. I want to talk about social emotional learning, and I want to give my thanks to Ms. Millett, Mr. Martini, and Ms. Geekus at Cummings Elementary for their support. My daughter has had some emotional challenges these past few years, and she's been in and out of the SEL program. And without getting too much into it, as we've kind of worked through her challenges, we realized that a lot of her problems are inherited from mom. So I say that up here. And I hear a lot from community members how we need to get back to the basics and teachers need to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, I got the basics. I didn't have SEL, and I'm now got some gray hair, 41, dealing with my issues. So it is a wonderful thing that my daughter is able to deal with the things that I deal with at a younger age. And traditional therapy is great, that's part of our process as well, but having someone in the school who can be there with her when her behavior gets a little bit kind of below the line, as we would call it, it's really made a really big difference. So I just want to commend the staff at Cummings for their work with her and just for being a welcoming place for her all the time. And I want to give thanks to my whole Bulldog family for having this resource available to us. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Next up, Alan Traxler, followed by Julie Dahl.
Hello, my name is Alan Traxler. I live in Grandville, and I have 2 daughters attending school here. I'm also speaking in favor of social emotional learning. My daughters tell me time and again when they have to go through some of these lessons, and though they themselves don't, sometimes kids, they don't want to eat their vegetables. Sometimes kids don't want to go to gym class. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. But I think it's good. I think some of the things I'm seeing where they take a moment and take a deep breath might seem like a minor thing, but regulating your emotions, thinking about what you're going to say, taking a moment, it's really important. How many of us have gone through school with someone who wasn't taught that? Someone who had a lot of outbursts, a lot of anger, a lot of flare-ups day to day, a lot of distractions where they're interrupting other students' learning. Maybe you went through that when you were in school. Maybe you had somebody in the classroom who was a little disruptive. That person may have benefited from some SEL. Some of these methods of, okay, I'm going to take a moment and breathe. I'm going to think about what I'm feeling like. Oh, it actually is a component of life, is thinking about, oh, wait a second, I'm actually mad in this moment. That doesn't appear automatic to everybody. Like, wait a second, I'm anxious or I'm sad. That it's just part of humanity. It's learning about yourself. And I think it makes the community better when we have people who might not cause some disturbances in community settings. I'm sure we've been seen people in the community who maybe needed to have taken a moment or think about a different way to express themselves. So I think it's a good thing that this program exists. Also, we have apparently a program, DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I had a friend named, well, I guess I shouldn't say his name. I'll call him Larry. But he was sometimes the only black kid in his class. And he would express to me how that felt. And when he went to college, he got to be part of a special kind of a dorm that had a more diverse group of people. And so he expressed to me the contrast between sometimes being the only black kid in his class and being around people that of all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds. And he shared with me his feelings about how that made him feel. And I think if we are to be a welcoming community, we need to make people of diverse backgrounds feel comfortable, feel accepted. And I think DEI does that. I think there can be an atmosphere of welcome, or we can choose some kind of slightly hostile, or we're just going to ignore this issue altogether. As for me, I would prefer to be welcoming to people. People who might have a different religion than me, people who might look differently, maybe they're a different ethnicity, maybe they're immigrants, maybe they're from a different nationality. I think it's a wonderful thing to be welcoming. It's always been part of my life to how can I say hello to other people, how can I welcome them in? And having a program where that is considered and thought about, I think is valuable. So thank you for including these programs as part of Grandville. I think it's a piece of what makes it great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trexler. Next up, Julie Dahl, followed by Brenda Montgomery.
Good evening. My name is Julie Dahl. My address is on file. I want to first address the millage that was discussed this evening. Joe, I thank you so much for bringing up some very valid points. You've lived through this. You've gone through this. I think the wisdom that you offer this board is incredibly valuable. To say that's inappropriate to have a healthy discussion or to bring up an experience that someone went through is completely out of line. And I think that that's just a very symptomatic snapshot of the overall condescending attitude towards the people who were just elected in this recent election onto the board. Case in point, last week, again, no leadership roles, not even a nomination. You guys are going to lockstep and just not even acknowledge or have any sort of self-reflection or anything with what the community voted for. To say it's a completely different experience with Wyoming, also, I would push back on that quite a bit. This is not completely different. Residents and taxpayers, business owners who are residents and taxpayers see an increase. They see lots of increases coming. They see lots of increases happening right now. The last thing they want to do is lay people off, those people that live in the community. It is the same thing. Schools did not diminish because they were underfunded. They go downhill because leadership doesn't represent the values of that community. And people move, and people take their kids out of school. Private education homeschooling has gone up exponentially in the last 3 years. Again, to throw more money at the problem isn't going to solve the issue either. Case in point, the pie graph up there, how much ERSA funds, ARP, whatever they call it now, that was just implemented recently, and the test scores have gone down drastically. So now you're asking for more and more money without a real way to solve the problem of all the learning loss. So again, Joe, thank you very much for staying convicted to your values and to speaking up, and I appreciate a healthy discussion. It's a good thing. Let's talk about learning loss then real quick too. To fluff it up and say we're doing great, to fluff it up and say, hey, we're doing good, when we average about 60% across the board is just not based in reality. We're not doing good. We're failing. Anywhere in the real world, that's failing. Why are the older kids failing? I don't know. I'm just going to throw it out there. When they were younger, did they have masks on for years? Was that relationship barrier there? Was that non-connectivity there because you guys implemented masks? I commend you for going back to school in person sooner than a lot of other school districts. That's great. But you also stuck to a mask mandate when you didn't need to. Could that be reflective of some of this learning loss as well? We're not talking about why this learning loss happened, and until you identify the problem, you will continue to replicate it every single time. And now you just want more money to help with the learning loss. I would love to see more money. I would love to see more money with the learning loss, but again, it goes back to trust that we don't trust you. We don't. The community doesn't trust you anymore because that trust was broken a long time ago. I don't think it's a big issue here at Grandville. Again, we just need to be a lot more cognitive of where we are spending our money. And now you're going to go out tomorrow and file for this. You say you need it. You say it has to happen. I would side with Joe. I don't see it passing, and that's too bad. You're going to spend a whole lot of time, money, and resources at the taxpayer expense to try to educate people when they understand it. You're going to send out all the advertising, all the flyers, all of this at
1
whose
minute.
cost? Who's going to be paying for that? Shouldn't we be focusing on the learning loss? Shouldn't our time, money, and efforts go towards all the learning loss? Isn't that what we should be focusing? We have some great programs coming up. The aeronautical, that's amazing. That's going to come from grants. Can we not be a little more diligent with the money that we have? I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Also, the Grandville parents have come together. They have spoke loud and clear. Like Lynn said, we'll be forming a PAC. That's amazing. Continually gain those leadership roles on this board to turn it around, to make it something that actually represents the parents and the community versus the state. When you see that pie graph, it all makes sense now because all of that money comes from the state, the majority of it. You are all beholden to the state, not those of us sitting in the audience. Thank you.
Our final speaker for the night is Brenda Montgomery.
Hi, I'm Brenda Montgomery, and my address is on file. First, I just wanted to say that I taught during the pandemic, and I retired after 25 years with Grandville. I also had a child that was in 6th grade when the pandemic happened. That was a horrible, it was awful. Besides me trying to teach online, she's trying to learn online, and it was emotionally and psychologically a disaster for all of us. And I don't know a single family that wouldn't tell you that. Every single family would say that to you. 7th grade for her was challenging. It was a new environment, being in the middle school. It was a challenge. 8th grade, she pulled it together a little bit more, but her grades in both 7th and 8th grade were nowhere where I would have wanted them. My child is a freshman at the high school now, and she had all A's at the semester. This is not something that is going to affect our children forever. People have went through horrible tragedies in their life. They have been refugees. They have went through wars, and they have been able to gain the skills. Is that something any of us wanted our kids to go through? By no means. Not only did I sit in a classroom with these kids that had these problems, I had them in my house. And it is to say that the teachers in the district are not doing everything that they can do to help these kids, I think is a that does not give credit to the schools and the teachers for everything that they are doing and as much effort and heart as they put into their job. So I want to tell you that I am glad to see that the scores are going up, and I was not surprised to see a large dip, and I anticipate that they are going to continue to go up. And yes, those were some big skills, as Scott said, that, those more complex skills, and they are going to get them back because now it's important to them. We all learn things when we need to learn them, and they will. So thank you for continuing to show the progress of our kids. The other thing that I just want to address is, and I don't even know if it's addressed, I live in the Windy Brook neighborhood, right by where the new middle school is going to be, And Mr. Barrett, I said to you when the construction started, please, whatever you do, do not do road construction on Canal and 52nd simultaneously. And you did not, so thank you very much for doing the 52nd 1 Street already. Believe me, I thank you every day. But as a person who has dropped children off at the middle school and who at the high school, and now seeing just how busy it is, I do have concerns about the traffic flow in that area and about the number of cars, and that the turn lane to turn left into the new middle school will fit 1 car. And that when you go in from Wilson, when it goes, when the right lane comes in, the fire hydrant is right at the curve. So I do have concerns about that, as well as just hoping that you are looking at some traffic flow patterns. Getting out of the high school after school is a nightmare. And there could be some re-looking and configuring at it. Just a stop sign where the students go out onto Canal, I think would be a great help, so that people could get out of the parent pickup area. But I can also see with the additional entrances into the middle school from behind Costco, I can see that
1
that's
minute.
going to be a real traffic issue, and there's going to be a number of collisions. And I know that it's going to take a while to work out. I'm just hoping that there's plans in place for some traffic studies between Grandville and Wyoming for those to make some plans. I know the first year is a new year, but after that there are some plans in place to study that to make it a safe area for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. The next regular meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be Monday, February 20th, 2023 at 7 p.m. here at the Administration Building. This meeting is adjourned, 9:06.